Do you know someone amazing? Someone who has a unique job or hobby? Maybe someone involved with an interesting organization, be it a creative community or a charitable mission. There are people like this hidden in our community, living their daily lives all the while achieving incredible goals, creating works of art, inspiring others to be their best, or just generously donating their time. This show is about putting a spotlight on these members of our community. I'm Ben Harris, a 2017 graduate of Shrewsbury High School and alumnus of the SHS Speech and Debate team, here to introduce a new show that will be hosted by different members of the current team each episode, showcasing their talents as they work to deliver these enriching community stories to you as we celebrate these quiet but undoubtedly impressive individuals. Simply put, we want you to stay with us for a moment, because these are the people you have to meet.
Hello and welcome to another episode of You Have to Meet. I'm Sophia Peng, current president of the Shrewsbury High School Speech and Debate team, and I'm here today with Adam Harris. Now, Adam, you are a pilot, and you are the director of aircraft maintenance and the aircraft sales manager at East Coast Aero Club. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you want to tell me a bit more about what you do?
Sure. So I run a flight school up at Hanscom Field that trains people to fly. So someone right out of high school or someone retired out of a normal career that wants to do it for pleasure or for a professional career. We'll train them from coming in the door to all the way through commercial pilot certificate.
Wow, that's really awesome. Yeah. And how did you initially decide that you wanted to go into aviation?
Well, we grew up in a house, my brother and I, that had an airplane. My father was a pilot. Oh. And so we were kind of involved with it from a young age. So we would go flying on the weekends, and it was just something I always found interest in.
Yeah. And then you decided to just pursue aviation, or was
there
a kind of...
when I was young and in high school, I didn't know whether I wanted to, pursue being a mechanic or being a pilot. Mm-hmm. Didn't really know, like most kids, you don't know what you want to do. Mm-hmm. But I knew I like working with my hands. I like mechanical things.
Yeah, I heard you were really talented with mechanics.
So we did, I kind of progressed all through that part of the journey, and I wasn't fulfilling enough. So I thought maybe aviation would be a fun place to work on airplanes. Piloting I always liked, but I always kind of knew I wanted to do it as a hobby, with my family, or at that time future, family, just to have it as something to do with friends and family. But I really did have a lot of passion for repairing things, and it all got focused towards aviation once I realized that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah, did your father help you at all in your path to
pursuing
this?
Oh, absolutely. So it starts out, it's hard to just get out of school and be an airplane mechanic. You have to kind of have that interest. You don't have to, but it's probably a good thing. So we always tinkered with things. My brother and I, we always fixed our own cars. We did all the traditional things growing up. And then my father was very influential in just kind of steering us towards, maybe a better career or something that might challenge us more. So he would just pose ideas, and we would kind of, pick up on them, and he would gently steer us if he felt like we needed a little guidance. So I loved, right from the beginning, I loved aviation. I just loved being involved with airplanes, and I knew I wanted to keep them safe and work on them.
Mm-hmm. And once you decided that this is what you wanted, what did your educational track look like to get where you are?
Well, I went to Shrewsbury High School. Okay. I graduated class of 1990, and I kind of then did know I didn't want a traditional 4-year degree. I couldn't, it wasn't something I was interested in. So I wanted to get my hands right into working on airplanes. So I went to a school, at the time it's out of business now, called East Coast Aero Tech. Okay. It was up in Bedford, Mass. And it had been open for 50 years or so. They had a very good reputation. So you'd go through that school, and you'd go there for 19 months at the time.
Wow. Did you have to apply to get in?
You did. It was it's like a trade school. It's similar to any trade school type process. So
and anyone can apply, like
anyone can apply.
School,
yeah, and its equivalent is still available in Concord right now, called NAA, and there's another one down by the Cape. So aviation training schools are around, maintenance training schools. So I went through that course. It was 19 months, and you get out of that, you get a certificate with it called an A&P, and it's an airframe and power plant license. So you can work on the aircraft, the body of the airplane, or the power plant. Now they call it a power plant because some have like a gas engine like your car, and some of them are jet engines. So they just call it a power plant. So you get a certificate to fix those, and then you graduate and you go out and you find a job, a beginning entry-level job. 19 months, yeah. So you work with someone. You get out, you don't, you know the basics, but you have to really have someone mentor you, like any trade would, So I did that, and at the same time I was doing that, I started focusing really on getting my pilot's license. So I did those two things, and then I moved into getting the next certificate above an A&P is called an inspection authorization with the FAA. So it gives you a certificate to relicense airplanes. So every year, every airplane you've ever seen, it expires. The license on it expires, and it has to be reissued by someone with an authorization from the FAA.
Is that kind of like car inspection?
It is.
That you go
It
through?
is, but it doesn't. It takes. It can take 50 or 60 hours to get through the inspection, where your car is, maybe 30 minutes. So depending on the size of the plane, it can take, one man a week or two to get through it. It's a large checklist. So you have to check the whole airplane front to back because you need it to be safe.
Yeah.
So that's
Is that something that you do now?
We do. We do a lot of them. We do a lot of inspections. It's kind of my passion is performing inspections or overseeing inspections that happen with a crew of technicians, and moving them through the process and bringing them in, inspecting them, repairing what we find broken, and putting them back out for service.
And is that with your the East Coast Aero Club, right?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, and was that like a natural progression for you to go from like Aero Tech to Club, or how was that?
Well, yeah, no, it's a little confusing because they're the same name.
Yeah.
They're not related. The
Okay.
the guy that owns East Coast Aero Club worked for East Coast Aero Tech.
Okay.
And he noticed that a lot of students that wanted to be mechanics wanted also to learn to fly. So he kind of grabbed half of the name and then offered
That makes sense.
a course for some of these aspiring mechanics to do a pilot's license on the side. So, and then that school went away, and he just kept going with his East Coast Aero Club.
Okay, and the planes that you're working on now, are they just planes that fly around this area, or are they from?
They do. So they're owned by the club, and they're either owned or leased by the club, and they fly everywhere. So they'll stay local to do their training, their initial training. They might do what's called a cross country, which might be a short trip to the Vineyard and then down to maybe Long Island and back to Boston area. So they'll do these little trips to learn the process. Once they get their license, though, they take them all over the country. Wow. So they'll rent a small 4-passenger airplane and put their friends or family and just make trips like you would in a car, like a road trip. They do it in planes, and that's the club part. It's kind of an odd name because we're a flight school, but we started out as a club. We kept the name, but it's a lot of people just use them for transportation, for business, or pleasure.
That's really awesome. So do you want to tell me a bit about a typical workday for you?
Sure. So that day starts, it's pretty early. I manage a dozen or so mechanics, so they all get started in the morning pretty early. And they're very self-sufficient, so they come in and just get to. There's people that schedule the work. There's people. I'm kind of in charge and just orchestrating it all. So just kind of making sure all the inspections are happening. They have what they need to perform the inspections. When questions come up, I guide them through the process of getting the plane back on track and legal, or making decisions on what needs to be repaired and what needs to be replaced. So just hundreds of decisions a day with regarding airworthiness and safety. And on an aging fleet of airplanes. So most airplanes, a lot of airplanes are 30 to 40 years old. So every year I get older, the whole fleet does too.
Yeah, you don't drive cars that old.
Right,
Yeah.
so they require a lot of maintenance.
And kind of how large is this club that you're working in? Like, what's
It's about 50 airplanes and helicopters.
Okay.
So it's large. It's the largest one I know of that's not related to a college. So it's grown from one plane to 50, and I can't think of a school that's bigger, within probably east of the Mississippi. That's not related to a college,
Yeah.
It's grown. Boston's a good area. There's 3 locations around Boston: Norwood, Bedford, and Nashua. So just there's a lot of interest for it.
So I know that Mark from SMC went up with you and took some footage of Shrewsbury.
He did.
Yeah, what was that like? Do you want to tell?
It was great. Yeah. No, we met at Worcester Airport. It was a beautiful morning. We we did a little pre-flight on the plane, which you'll probably see. You know, every flight starts with, you know, kind of a good inspection of the airplane.
Okay.
What I did on TV was kind of a brief version, just to kind of show that the manufacturer of the airplane, each manufacturer makes a checklist, and everything in aviation is done with a checklist, whether it's flying or maintaining them. The manufacturer provides you a checklist, and you go through that list of items to check before nothing gets forgotten. So we did that. We did that checklist, a brief version of that together. And then this is a Cessna Skyhawk. It's a 4-seat general aviation airplane that you'd use for personal travel or training. So when you go flying, you start out with a pre-flight. The manufacturer makes a checklist, and you pretty much would go through and check. I've already flown this plane today and done a pre-flight. But you'd check your fuel, your oil, you'd give a walk around, you'd check all the flight controls, you'd visually inspect each control of the airplane, you'd check the lights, you'd look at the landing gear, you would look around for any damage, and like I said, the manufacturer makes a pretty complete checklist for all phases of flight, including before you even leave. So you'd inspect the propeller. You'd inspect the air inlets, air filter. You'd check the oil every flight, unlike your car, where you check it, you know, once a month or something. Every flight you check the oil. The fuel is kept in the wings, so you'd visually check that, and you'd also drain it, which I've already done, to check for water sediment or any contaminants. Then you'd complete by just working your way around the airplane again for damage, checking all the controls. The ailerons, the flaps for movement. You'd run the flaps down, and you'd inspect those. I've already done that today. The elevator, you'd work your way around to the tail, and you'd check your elevator and your trim controls and your rudder. You'd look at all your different antennas. There's comm, radio antennas. There's navigation antennas. There's emergency locator antenna, GPS. So you just do a real thorough inspection of the airplane. It takes a good thorough pre-flight takes about 15 minutes to do, and then you'd go flying for the day, and each time you flew, you'd perform another pre-flight for that day. And then we took off from Worcester Airport. It was a beautiful morning, windless, very calm and smooth.
That's awesome.
Visibility was great.
Is that kind of like the ideal weather you're looking for?
It is. So, you know, if you have to get somewhere and you're the pilot, you just go in whatever weather if you're qualified.
Yeah.
But when you're taking people, it really is the responsible thing to do. You know, we passed over a lot of days to get to that day because I didn't want it to be uncomfortable. It can be bumpy. Some people get nauseous, you know, a little bit. You know, if you get car sick, it might not be a career for you, you know, because it's that same feeling.
Definitely.
But we had a beautiful day, so
that's awesome.
worked out well.
Is like recreational flying, is that something that you need to, because I know obviously with like space in the air, right, like air traffic, that's something that a lot of like local areas have to be aware of.
Right.
Is that if you're flying recreationally, do you have to like send someone a message that, hey, I'm going out on this day or anything like that?
No, it's pretty free. In the States, that's why most people from around the world come to learn to fly here, because there are regulations, but it's not over-regulated at all. So it's still very free. You could take off with one radio call to Worcester Airport and fly to the West Coast really without talking to anyone if you didn't want to.
Okay.
It's pretty free. Now, if you go through major metropolitan areas with airports and different things, you obviously have to call, and there's safety things that would just logically you would want to keep in contact as you fly. So if a problem did come up, you could report it immediately and get guidance. But no, it's very free. So what we did was around this area, you talked to Worcester Airport, and we took off and we went over Shrewsbury. I had to have a little bit of communication just telling them what we were going to do, because UMass is right there with the med flight, and I didn't want to tangle if they got a call. So we just kind of kept them aware of Worcester's space ends at about Lake Quinsigamond. So, but I just kept them aware of our whole flight, and then we returned, and they like that because they just know where you are.
And Worcester Tower 627 has a request.
Cessna 267, say your request.
I'd like to just proceed south of the extended center line of 11 and just do a little photo shoot over the south portion of Shrewsbury, then work my way down Route 9 if that's possible.
Cessna 627, continue right down, correction, continue on your present heading for now. Traffic is a Cessna off your right side, upwind runway 11.
627.
Engine 61, runway 29, proceed full length, cross runway 33.
I want to go into a little more of the logistics of that flight. Do you want to tell us what altitude you were flying at that day?
Sure, we were about 12 or 1,300 feet above the ground.
Okay.
And that provides, you can go down a little bit lower, but you kind of you don't know where you are, or you wouldn't if you weren't familiar with the town.
Yeah.
So, and if you get too high, it all kind of looks the same. So that's a pretty good altitude for safety. It gives you a cushion on what's legally required, and you can kind of see, you know where you are, but you can still make out things that you recognize.
Okay, that's actually really cool.
Yeah.
What type of plane were you flying?
We're flying a Cessna 172, so it's like a Toyota Camry of the airplanes.
Okay.
It's just a generic, very easy to maintain, very safe. They've made like 50,000 of them literally over the course of
Are they
its
small
run.
planes?
They are. The 4-seat airplane.
Okay.
So it's like vanilla ice cream. It's the run-of-the-mill, just a great dependable airplane.
Yeah, and you mentioned that you were coming out of Worcester Airport,
We were,
right? What
yeah.
was the route that you were taking?
So we took off from Worcester. We were pointing west towards Spencer. We took off and we made a left or a right turn, and I think a left turn, and we headed out over the southern portion of Shrewsbury, and we kind of headed towards Lake Quinsigamon, and then we headed up by White City, and then we went right down Route 9.
Right around, yeah.
Right, and then, because that's easily identifiable, and you can see, Home Depot is easy because it's orange, and you can kind of work your way down the new school. I think we had some footage of the new school they're building at the Glavin site.
Yeah.
And then we took a left at like Price Chopper and South Street, and then went up Main Street, kind of Maple Ave, and then we kind of turned to the right, to the north a little bit, and we looked at the high school. And then we hooked around to the left. There's a tower there, which people don't realize that huge tower was actually higher than us, near Wachusett Reservoir, just south in Boylston, just a little bit north of 290. But we turned around the high school and we went back down the lake and over the Donahue Rowing Center, and then turned west again back to the airport.
How long did that take?
Oh, I don't know, maybe 12 minutes, the whole thing. It's pretty fast.
Yeah,
You're
that's
cruising
crazy.
at, about 115 miles an hour in that small plane. That's a slow plane, but that's about what you cruise at. So it doesn't take long without traffic lights to
that's
zoom
really
all around
true.
town. Yeah.
All right, and I want to go a little more into kind of what the field looks like today, and I know that's something you're really passionate and interested about. Yeah. So is aviation like a popular career track that you see people going into?
I don't think kids really understand that it's an option for them. It's not out there. It was bigger years ago, I think, but the demand is so high right now that we have, when I got into this, you needed probably 3,000 flight hours to get a job with a decent airline, which takes a long time, of each 1 hour at a time of flying. You can see that whole flight we did was maybe 12 minutes.
Yeah.
So you need, it takes a long time. Now it's in the order of hundreds of hours, and you can get a job with these airlines, and they'll finish your training. So a lot of these have retired. A lot of the older guys, the Vietnam era pilots, have come in now to retirement. So there's a big void for mechanics, for pilots, for air traffic control, for helicopter pilots that do like med flight type work or oil rig work. So it's a good career. I don't know that aviation, we do a good enough job of getting the word out there to the youth, because it's exciting. It's a fun career.
Yeah.
It's one of those jobs I never met anyone that left it really for lack of passion. They just love it, So.
Okay, and is that something that you need to be interested in initially, or is it easy to get into a program maybe if you started in a different program and wanted to transfer in?
Right, no, absolutely. You could go, some kids know right off the bat that that's the direction they want to go in, and they'll go to Embry-Riddle, University of North Dakota. Bridgewater State, right here in Mass, has a great program with flying. And then some kids kind of get through college and realize, I don't really want to do my major. And fortunately, if you have that 4-year degree in anything, if you just then convert and go to a local type flight school and get all your ratings, and you can do that while you have a job, you can guide your path right into aviation as long as you can build up the hours and get the right certificates.
That's really cool. And something that definitely came to mind for me as a high schooler going into college is, I know a lot of my friends too are indecisive about what they want to do. They don't want to go into a college and or go into a program with fully decided that this is their career.
Right.
And I want to know that if you commit to aviation, is that something that you have to stick with, or is it easy to get out of it?
It is a specific skill set, so I'm not sure it would adapt perfectly outside of it, But I kind of always recommend, start with taking a few flying lessons. If you think
Okay.
you want to fly, for a few $100s, you can go on a few intro rides and just see if it feels like something that, you could be passionate about, because it's a tough career. You have to be, there's a lot at stake, so it has to be more than just an average career. You have to be kind of passionate about it. There's a lot of people, eventually, if you get to where you want to go, there's going to be a lot of people counting on you. So you have to be, it's not a normal job where you have to really be pretty passionate.
Yeah. And what are some of the interests that people can have that can lead into aviation?
Well, okay, people just think of aviation as being a pilot.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you're asking, but there's mechanics, there's pilots, there's FAA, so there's the FAA is Federal Aviation Administration, so they kind of oversee and regulate the industry. You can go into the flying side of that, you can go to the maintenance side of that.
Yeah.
There's a navigation side. All these airliners flying around are all using navigational aids. Those all have to be maintained,
Oh, that's
inspected.
true, yeah.
So if you're electronics background, some people never even want to fly. There are people at the airport that I'll ask to go flying and they're like, oh no, I'm all set.
Yeah.
But they really are passionate about providing safe fuel. Running the fuel farm that, fuel in your car, you pull over if it's wrong. If it's in an airplane, it's a whole problem. So
Yeah.
there are some people that never fly that are so passionate about just providing clean fuel. So there's all kinds of ways you can do med flight, helicopter. We have helicopter training too, East Coast. So that seems to be people, are pretty interested in that.
And are programs to pursue any of these, are they commonly found in colleges, or is it a certain schools that you would apply
Good question.
to?
Yeah, no, I think it's pretty specific. And, locally, like I said, Bridgewater, there's a lot of them. The big names are Embry-Riddle and University of North Dakota. That's the bigs, but they're very expensive. But you don't have to take that route. If your means are more modest, you can go to a regular state school and just do your flying on the side, and they'll still accept you. Once you get those credentials and that experience, you can work for a company and build your hours and get paid as a flight instructor. So you go to the flight school, you'd learn to fly from them, you'd get your flight instructor, then they'd pay you to fly with the new students, and you could still have a life and a career and a job on the side and build your hours. And then a lot of people make the jump then to a commercial aviation job. So you can kind of do it slowly. Yeah, you can, and then you can always back out of it, and just keep it as a flight instructor, or if nothing else, just keep that license for pleasure flying with your friends and family.
Yeah. Why do you think it's important for people to go into aviation nowadays?
Well, like anything, I think you have to be passionate about it. I think a lot of people just cruise through life and don't ever find a passion. And I think aviation just holds so many possibilities for people to really look back and say, I'm glad I did that. You've put a lot of planes in the air. I put a lot of planes up in the air full of people. And it's kind of rewarding when you go to bed at night thinking all those people are safe.
That's really good.
Yeah.
And I know something that was mentioned was kind of women in the field of aviation. Do you want to talk a little more about that?
Yeah, it's never changed a whole bunch. It's kind of a man-dominated field, and I see 5% a lot. I see 7% a lot. But truly, the women that we see come in, they go full speed ahead and go right to the airlines quick. They really do. It's a great career to get involved in. I wish the high schools did a better job of outreach to kind of steer the opportunities that are available. And a lot of girls don't even think that that's something they do because they get on an airliner. You don't see it often, but it's not. It's something that women can just be fantastic at.
Yeah, definitely. I think it would be cool if high schools could,
Yeah,
because I know they have like military officers come in and talk to the students. That could be cool if they could learn a little more about jobs in aviation.
Right.
And I just want to finish up kind of asking about your personal experiences and what do you enjoy most about your work?
I do. I enjoy my work. It doesn't feel like work. So I go in and, like I said, we kind of get everyone going, and then my day might quickly morph into going to look at a plane at another airport and flying somewhere, or a several-day trip, or taking my family, flying, and we go down. Martha's Vineyard is only 45 minutes away in an airplane.
That's so crazy.
Yeah, and that little airplane that we did on the show, you could take that and go land on a grass field on the south side of Martha's Vineyard. No one knows this even exists, You just land there and you walk across the street to the beach, and in 45 minutes you're back in Worcester. It's neat. I've taken my family through the whole Bahama chain, 300 miles down through the Bahamas, and landed at like little tiny deserted islands, really, with shell runways, and it's all just available to you to use. You know, it's a fantastic. So that's what I like about it. It's just you can make it very exciting. You know?
What are some of the opportunities you've had in this field?
I have. I've enjoyed interesting career I really like buying and selling airplanes. So we do a fair amount of that with the club, buying and selling, replacing, repairing damaged aircraft. So, you know, you meet a lot of interesting people that have a lot to offer you. You know, have a lot to just back and forth. These are smart, fun people to be around, and it's just a very up atmosphere. It's not a you know, when I get into other things, I go boating for a day, I'm always a little discouraged because some of the other boaters are kind of maybe rude or anything. In aviation, you go anywhere, if you land and you're broke down, someone just gives you tools, gives you parts, gives you a car to take for the night, offers you to come back, because you're a pilot, you're in this club of, you're never stuck. They'll give you a ride, they'll do whatever. They'll go fly to another airport to get you a part, and they never ask for anything. It's a very nice group of people.
Really
I've never seen anything like it.
And for people who are interested in going into this profession, what can they look forward to, would you say?
Right. I think, you know, hard work is part of it, you know, but I think at the end of the day or at the end of their career, they'll really feel like they added something. If you end up being an airline pilot, I mean, you'll fly thousands and thousands of people responsible for their safety, getting them home. Maintenance, we talked about that, same thing. Air traffic control. There's a lot of unsung heroes, but in aviation that you never even know about, but that's what makes it the safest mode of transportation. You know, they're up in the air, thousands of them all the time, with very few issues. You know. Yeah,
it's crazy how impressive it is, and how much work it goes into it, and everything. Yeah. All right. Well, that is all the time we have.
Great.
Thank you so much for being here today with us, Adam.
Thank you for having me.
As always, we would love to keep showcasing the amazing members of our community. So if you know anyone who you think we have to meet, feel free to send the information to an email that will be provided in the end credits. Once again, I'm Sophia Peng. You're watching You Have to Meet, and thank you so much for being with us.